Remembrance Day, November 2011. A wide range of Muslim and non-Muslim groups decide to come together to tackle the menace that is al-Muhajirun, who were intent on publicly burning poppies to disrespect the memories of British soldiers. The Islamic Society of Britain joined forces with my organisation, British Muslims for Secular Democracy, and many others to organise a counter-protest. This did not go ahead in the end, but only because al-Muhajirun were banned the night before by the Home Secretary. However, this coalition was instrumental in establishing a sea change among British Muslim organisations fighting radicalism. How did such collaborations come about? When I first took up the role of director at British Muslims for Secular Democracy in 2009, I received a shower of emails, blog mentions, and social media alerts, ranging from utter confusion to outbursts of unprovoked anger. How could a Muslim organisation in the UK openly and proactively promote secular democracy, people demanded? Wasn't this at odds with the Quran and Hadith, asked both conservative Muslims and non-religious secularists at the opposite end of the spectrum? 5 years on, I think the best testament to BMSD's articulation of a liberal Muslim voice is the fact that I get asked this question far less frequently. We've worked closely with secular activists of all stripes on a range of topical issues that strike at the heart of tensions between the religious and the secular, from the inclusion of women and LGBT people in religious spaces, to the treatment of minority sects like Ahmadi Muslims, to gender segregation in universities. We tried to lead the way on these issues rather than being at the sidelines. While we do not delve into theology in any great level of detail, and our main concern is with the civic engagement of Muslims, we have engaged with and spearheaded various endeavours that do invoke theological arguments. In 2012, we hosted a talk at Queen Mary University with Manwar Ali, aka Abu Muntazir, Chief Executive of the Ipswich-based Muslim charity Jimas. He outlined his moral, philosophical, and spiritual trajectory from a rocky start as a Mujahideen who went to fight in Afghanistan to a Muslim leader who actively embraces secular democracy and self-defines as broad-minded. He stated that secular management of religious spaces had enabled him to educate other people about his beliefs without imposing on them. He said it was important to distinguish between hard secularism, where individuals were discouraged from having any kind of religious affiliation at all, and soft secularism, where the state remains neutral as a means of negotiating between different religious and non-religious expressions in the public sphere. He quoted the Quran on the importance of pluralism and drew parallels between Islamic concepts like consultation, consensus, dignity, collective interest, justice, intellect, and the caretaking of certain items on trust, with their equivalents in modern secular democracies. So groundbreaking was Manwar's talk that typical feedback from attendees looked like this. I was a bit dubious about attending a debate on Islam and secular democracy and the compatibility between the two. However, Abu Muntasir's views were refreshing and certainly gave me some food for thought. The fact that he had held the opposite view in the past and now considered secularism to be desirable greatly added to his credibility. Louay Safi, a member of the board of directors at the Washington, D.C.-based Center of the Study for Islam and Democracy, also sees a good fit. I think that Islam as a set of norms and ideals that emphasizes the equality of people, the accountability of leaders to community, and the respect of diversity in other faiths is fully compatible with democracy. I don't see how it could be compatible with a government that would take away those values. But do British Muslims agree with this view as a whole? Britain is often described as a society which adheres to procedural secularism, as mentioned before. In contextualizing Islam in Britain, 2 rigorous research projects conducted by Cambridge University that asked a diverse group of Muslim participants to answer the question, what does it mean to live faithfully as a Muslim in Britain today? An overwhelming majority of participants affirmed their support for this model. They observed that procedural secularism provides many benefits for British Muslims, including religious freedom. As British Muslims, we are able, for the most part, to practice our faith in an atmosphere of respect and security, with recourse to established anti-discrimination provisions if this is not the case. The Measuring Anti-Muslim Attacks project is a prime example. Many other European countries have far worse problems in terms of the scale of anti-Muslim sentiment, yet they do not have designated reporting and mapping mechanisms for such crimes, let alone anything that has buy-in from national governments or mainstream organizations like Victim Support or Neighborhood Watch. Meanwhile, proponents of ideological secularism often cite the negative role that religion can play when it comes to issues like women's rights as grounds for their objection to allowing religion into the public sphere at all. When hardline religious activists and preachers speak out against women's rights and use supposedly religious arguments, this furthers such misconceptions. Some extreme acts have more to do with culture than religion. For example, forced marriage is a negative cultural practice. Although associated with Islam, it is actually at odds with Islamic history, which includes examples of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ending marriages in which consent had not been sought. However, attributing all of these negative practices to culture alone is a whitewash. Several theological arguments are usually advanced on the alleged impermissibility of marriage between Muslim women and non-Muslim men, for example. Fortunately, we have experienced and confident Islamic scholars like Dr. Osama Hassan who have rebutted these arguments in public. I'm also a huge believer in the use of arts and culture when it comes to challenging these norms, which is why I'm the executive producer of a documentary called Hidden Heart, featuring 3 Muslim women who married non-Muslim men and the backlash they faced as a result. If the majority of British Muslims do support procedural secularism as a system, then what about individual secularist and humanist activists and forging links of commonality between all of us? I think this boils down to 2 things. Number 1, clarifying the values we subscribe to, and number 2, a strong commitment to social action. Manwar Ali's 2012 talk provided some answers on the first point. He had quoted former MP Michael Wills in enunciating what British values actually were: creativity, openness, tolerance and adaptability, as well as human dignity, understanding the narrative of the other, and how to frame grievances. The overarching value was, of course, the need to build strong communities, which leads us nicely into the second point. Within a procedural secular state such as Britain, Muslims have rights and responsibilities that are in keeping with Islamic teachings. Far from advocating withdrawal from society, mainstream Islamic scholarship regards civic engagement as highly desirable for Muslim citizens. Understanding that being a religious Muslim in Britain today also means living a full life as a citizen with all the rights and responsibilities that entails is a crucial step towards becoming well-integrated citizens in today's Britain. Islamic history has something to say about the link between citizenship and religion as well. Imam Abu Ishaq al-Shatibi, an Andalusian scholar who lived in the 14th century, articulated this principle in his work on the Maqasid al-Sharia, goals of the Sharia or Islamic principles. He drew parallels between citizens' rights and responsibilities in the state, such as freedom of conscience and the obligation to speak out against tyranny, and the objectives of Islam. More needs to be done to highlight this area of thought and how it can be used as inspiration in the lives of British Muslims today. It does not mean abusing democratic rights to further interests that are in themselves thoroughly undemocratic, tribalistic, and parochial. The petition calling for Majid Nawaz's removal as a prospective Liberal Democrat parliamentary candidate for tweeting an innocuous cartoon was a prime example of this. Good practice includes Rumi's Kitchen, an interfaith soup kitchen in Cricklewood that a group of us volunteer for. It is mainly run by Muslims, but has volunteers with a diverse range of beliefs and serves everyone, regardless of their background or beliefs. It also includes People Like Us Interfaith, an interfaith social action initiative, which I'm on the steering group of, which aims to share good practice between different religious and non-religious individuals towards tackling shared social concerns. We held our inaugural event at the Wolf Institute in Cambridge in April 2013 and had panel discussions on bereavement, work, family and education. It was truly touching to see a humanist funeral celebrant making connections with a recently bereaved Muslim on the panel. My concluding piece of advice is to build and maintain such relationships using social media as an enabler, but not as a substitute for real-life collaborations. Just because you don't agree with someone on everything, particularly issues of individual belief and doctrine, it doesn't mean you should discount their potential as an ally if you hold broadly the same values. Thank you.